Greetings and salutations once again, ladies and gentlemen. We've covered Judaism, we've covered Christianity. Now, on to the third of our major monotheistic religions, and in chronological order, that would be Islam. So, as we examine Islam, again, same way that we looked at Judaism and Christianity. Over there on the left of the screen, you can see the main image that is associated with Islam, and that is the symbol of the crescent moon and the star. So that is the symbol that is associated with the Islamic faith around the world. And as we examine Islam, again, we'll do it the same way we did Judaism and Christianity. We'll start with geography. In what part of the world do we see Islam originating? And today, where will you find Muslim populations around the world? Then we'll get into the basic history of the foundation of Islam, who is considered to be the founder of this faith, and what is the traditional history behind the creation of this religion. And then finally, we'll get down to just the basics, and we'll look at some of the very basic beliefs and facts regarding this religion. Thus, without further ado, my friends, let's go ahead and begin. All right, Islam is the second largest religion in the world, only behind Christianity, and followers of Islam can be found all over the world, just like Christianity. However, the largest concentration of Muslim population tends to stay in one general area, and that is North Africa and the Middle East. It's not quite as widespread in its general concentration, but still, I mean, it's a huge population, the second largest religion in the world, largely in the Middle East and North Africa. Now, the founder and main prophet of Islam is a man by the name of Muhammad. Muhammad was born in the year 570 AD, according to Islamic tradition, in the city of Mecca. And Mecca is located in the present-day country of Saudi Arabia. And it would be in the early 600s AD that Muhammad would found the religion that would become Islam. Now, where Muhammad grew up is very important, okay? Mecca in the Arabian Peninsula was one of the largest cities and the most important trading city in the Arabian Peninsula. When you look at the map to the left there, you can see all those trade routes that run from the Byzantine Empire, from the Persian empires, and many of them go to or intersect in, to, and from Mecca. So it's a major trading center in that part of the world, and this is where Muhammad was born. Now, Mecca was also important because it was home to a holy shrine called the Kaaba. And in this part of the world, in the Arabian Peninsula, they had people of all faiths, Jews, Christians, some of the more traditional polytheistic faiths were also there. And the Kaaba shrine was important to a lot of these traditional religions, and it contained statues of many deities that people liked to worship. And the Kaaba also contained what people believed to be a sacred black stone. And tradition in the area dictated that the sacred black stone had been given by the archangel Gabriel to Adam of the Adam and Eve fame. And pilgrims, religious travelers, would come from all over the Arabian Peninsula to visit the Kaaba shrine. So not only is Mecca a place of great importance for economics and trading, but the fact that religious pilgrims were coming there also brought a great deal of wealth to the city. And so this is the place where Muhammad was born and where he grew up. And as a young man, Muhammad managed to marry a wealthy older woman who was a widow whose husband had been a trader. And so Muhammad himself then became a merchant and trader, and very good at it, became very successful, very wealthy man, had a little bit of extra time on his hands. And in his extra time, Muhammad would go to the caves around the city of Mecca to fast and meditate and seek enlightenment. And according to Muslim tradition, during one of these fasting sessions out in these desert caves, Muhammad experienced a revelation or a vision around the year 610 AD. And in this vision, according to Islamic tradition, Muhammad hears a voice calling to him to become the apostle of the one true deity, what the Muslims called Allah. Allah is just the Muslim word for God, and this is the exact same God that's being worshipped by the Jews and by the Christians. And in this geographic area, there were plenty of populations of Jews and Christians, so the idea of this one monotheistic God would have been prevalent in that area, so it's no surprise that Muhammad would have been familiar with this. He receives several revelations over a period of time, and later Muhammad begins to share these revelations with people, with his family members, then his friends, and then a growing ring of folks, until he begins to gain a pretty decent-sized following. And just keeping it basic here, the message sounds very similar to that of Judaism and Christianity. According to Islamic beliefs, Muhammad was preaching things like obviously there's only one God, it's monotheistic, that all who believed in this God were equal, that the rich should share their wealth, that it's the responsibility of people to take care of the poor, again sounding very Christian there, that God measures the worth of people by their devotion and good deeds, that evildoers will be punished, and that the good will be rewarded. It contains a lot of tenets that sound very much similar to things contained in Judaism and Christianity. These religions are very, very closely related. There's a lot of ways they're different, but they're also very closely related. Now, Muhammad begins to gain a strong following, but not everyone in Mecca is very keen on this new message of his. See, the Arabian Peninsula at this time is not politically united. It's made up of a lot of different tribal groups, family groups, and religious groups, and Mecca was home to several of these. And the Muslims were a group that was growing in size and influence, and that made them rivals to some of the other groups who lived in Mecca. So not everybody liked Muhammad and his message, and ultimately in 622 AD, Muhammad and his followers were driven out of the city by a group of their rivals. They ended up fleeing north to a neighboring city called Yathrib. Later on, and now today it's called Medina, but they flee for their lives because they're being run out by these rivals of theirs. In Muslim tradition, the journey from Mecca to Medina is called the hijra, or the emigration. And this is an important point in Muslim traditional belief and in Muslim history, because this is the point from which the Muslim calendar actually begins. And according to Islamic tradition, Islamic belief, Muhammad and his followers, the Muslims, arrive in Medina, and there they are welcomed and accepted. And the religious message is also accepted. And soon the people in Yathrib/Medina not only accept the new religious message, but they accept Muhammad as their religious prophet, and they also accept Muhammad as their political leader. And according to history and according to Islamic beliefs, with this new, stronger following, eventually Muhammad returns to Mecca in 630 AD. And this is after defeating their forces in battle. Because even though Muhammad and the Muslims leave Mecca, they still maintain that rivalry with some of these other groups that were in the city of Mecca. And they did battle several times, and the decisive battle eventually took place in which Muhammad and his forces defeated their rivals. And in 630 AD, they returned to the city of Mecca as victors, as conquerors. And the inhabitants of the city are, of course, now more than happy to accept Islam as their religion and accept Muhammad as their prophet. And Mecca would become the religious capital of Islam. It would become the most important city in Islam, and it would be in this city in 632 AD, the city where Muhammad was originally born and raised, that he would eventually die. But Mecca would continue to be the most important city in Islam, as it still is today. Now, after the death of Muhammad, what we find is that the Arab armies are very, very successful in spreading Islam throughout the Arabian Peninsula. And part of it is because they were particularly skilled, and the other part had to do with a strong religious belief. See, Muslims believed that it was their duty to spread Islam, what they saw as the one true religion, and it was their duty to spread that religion, to spread that belief, and make it the dominant religion because they believe it to be the one true faith. And they do this partially through a concept that is called jihad, which means holy struggle. It's a reference to the struggle to spread Islam to all parts of the world. And today, really, that becomes the concept of jihad has become in our vernacular holy war, but it originated merely as the struggle to spread Islam. But how are they spreading it early on here? Largely through military conquest, and they're very successful at this. And so through a combination of military conquest and cultural diffusion, we start to see Islam spread throughout the Middle East, throughout North Africa, and up into Europe. When you look at the map that is over here to the right, you can see that within 100 or so years, Islam has become the dominant faith in the Middle East, displacing things like Christianity and Judaism, moving all the way through North Africa and all the way into what is present-day Spain. Now, this is a really important part of the story and development of Islam here, and that is the creation of something called Sharia law. See, while in Medina, in the year 624, Muhammad decreed something called the Medina Compact. The Medina Compact stated that all Muslims were to place loyalty to Islam above all else. and that Muhammad, as the community's religious leader, would now also be its political and military leader. So what you're doing is you're creating a theocracy here. And it was also dictated that all areas of life would be placed under religious law. So you're creating a theocracy where the religious leaders of Islam will also be the political leaders and military leaders of the community. And the religious laws of Islam would be the actual legal code. Because it was believed that, Muhammad is speaking through the word of God and laying down those laws, and so then Muhammad's laws are actually Allah's laws, and the laws of Allah are superior to the laws of man. That would be the belief. And then therefore the religious laws of Islam become the laws of the society. This is a concept that is called Sharia law. And Sharia law has a huge influence on a number of Islamic countries around the world today. Okay, so let's remember that Muhammad is not just the religious leader, but also the political leader of the Islamic lands. And after the death of Muhammad, the Islamic lands are ruled by these officials that are called caliphs, and the lands themselves are called the caliphate. Well, the first 4 caliphs after the death of Muhammad were all Muhammad's relatives. But after the death of the 4th caliph, a guy named Ali, another fella named Muawiyah took power and began a new dynasty called the Umayyad dynasty. However, as typical power struggles go, Ali's son Hussein believed that he was the rightful caliph. Therefore, he decided to fight a civil war against Muawiyah for control over the caliphate. It ended very badly for Hussein, as he and many of his followers were slaughtered in battle. Now, the deaths of Ali and Hussein lead to a split in the Islamic world. Islam now divided into 2 sects, Sunni and Shiite. And the Sunnis believed that the caliph could primarily be a political leader rather than a religious one. Thus, any devout Muslim could serve in the office because it was a political office. Shiites, on the other hand, believed that caliph was a religious and political thing, and thus only descendants of Muhammad should be caliph. And because of the death of Hussein in battle, Shiites tended to view suffering and martyrdom as signs of their religious devotion. Okay, so we've run through the history. Now let's hit some of the really basic facts and beliefs here about Islam. As we've seen with the other religions, the holy book, the Islamic holy book is something called the Quran, and Muslims worship in places that are called mosques. Now, the word Islam itself is an Arabic word that means to submit. Followers of Islam, called Muslims, as we already know, are expected to submit to the will of Allah in every aspect of their life. Christianity is very much a decide sort of belief, and Islam is very much a submit. Submit to the will of God in all things. The 3 holiest cities in the Islamic world are the city of Mecca, the city of Medina, and the city of Jerusalem. Mecca, of course, being the birthplace of Muhammad, Medina being the place that the Muslims went to when they were driven from Mecca. Jerusalem is important because Muslims believe this is the place where Muhammad ascended into heaven after his death. For Muslims, the holiest site in their entire religion is that Kaaba shrine located there in Mecca, and the sacred black stone located there within the Kaaba shrine. Now, the Quran, the holy book of the Islamic faith, presents basic moral values by which Muslims are expected to live, and some of those are very similar to Judaism and Christianity. Things like honor your parents, be kind to others, give to the poor. The Quran also sets some specific rules to guide daily activities, like no gambling, no drinking, no eating pork. It also lays down rules governing marriage and divorce and family life, and these are some things that we'll talk about a little bit more in class. Finally, the Quran presents 5 essential duties that all Muslims are to fulfill. These are what are called the 5 pillars of Islam, really the basis of their religious belief. The first states that all Muslims are required to submit completely to the will of Allah, hence the whole submit thing we mentioned earlier. Muslims are to pray 5 times a day, facing the holy city of Mecca. Third pillar is that Muslims are to fast from sunrise to sunset during the holy month of Ramadan. The fourth pillar refers to giving alms, helping the poor. And finally, the 5th mentions that all able-bodied Muslims should make the pilgrimage to Mecca at least once in their lives. Okay, there you have it. That's the third of our three major monotheistic religions. We looked at where Islam originates and where most Muslims lived. We've been through the history, basic beliefs, the founder of Islam, and then we went through just the basics. So, guys, those are the essential questions. Be ready to discuss these and several other things the next time that we meet. And as always, until that time, I bid you farewell.